After my daughter took my ranch for her in-laws, I gained a new perspective on family. My daughter slid a pen across the deed and said, "Trust me." The kitchen smelled like coffee and dust, and the paper's faint toner. The line she'd highlighted would temporarily transfer management of Dry Creek Ranch to a brand new LLC. I read the name twice, Dry Mesa Holdings. I'd never heard of it. Mara stood very straight, chin up, a habit she had from barrel racing summers. Her husband Ty hovered behind her with a thumbs-on-belt smile. "It's smart," he said. "We shield liability, keep your taxes light, and our credit gets a bump. Everybody wins." I rubbed my thumb across the embossed county seal on my old deed like it could still protect me. "Temporarily?" I asked. "Just until we refinance the shop," he said, smooth as a creek after snowmelt. The clock ticked. A fly worried the screen. The land outside breathed the way it always had. Slow, dry, faithful. I am 62. My knees know every fence post by number. The ranch is ribs and lungs, not a spreadsheet. My father died mending the east fence. My mother taught Mara to ride along the arroyo's edge, pointing out killdeer and owl pellets. I've kept water shares paid, mineral rights clean, taxes current, cattle modest. If I sign carelessly, I don't just lose grass. I lose mornings that smell like sage and iron, and the quiet right to rest a pasture when it needs mercy. "I want to read everything," I told them. "Of course," Ty said, "but the rate lock expires Friday." He made Friday sound like a sheriff's knock. Our neighbor Hank rattled past in his flatbed, two-finger salute, then gone. Dust hung in the driveway like an hourglass refusing to fall. I looked at Mara's eyes. Tired, scared, hopeful. 2 toddlers at home, and a mortgage chewing through their sleep. Love tugged one way. The brand burned into my palm, tugged another. "Leave copies," I said. "I'll read tonight." Ty stacked the packet like it was already mine. The paper felt slick and hungry. By sundown, I knew they would press me again before I slept. Mara grew up with calluses softer than mine, but earned all the same. Feeding bum calves from a blue bottle, holding the flashlight while I stitched a torn flank, counting bales like a summer hymn. When she married Ty, we strung lights between cottonwoods and danced on plywood over the packed dust. His mother, Evelyn, arrived in a white blazer and desert heels, talking about unlocking equity, like it was a chest I'd forgotten in the attic. I smiled and kept refilling the tea. I wanted to like them. I tried. The first time Evelyn toured the ranch house, she tapped the window trim with a nail and asked whether I'd considered leveraging the footprint. I said my leverage was a good rain and a fair price on hay. She laughed like I'd made a joke, then told Mara, "Moments like this are why families leave so much money on the table." I swallowed the splinter those words left behind. Last week, after I hauled a part to Ty's repair shop, he squinted at my truck. "You still running that antique?" he said. "We could finance you into something respectable. It'd help your image with buyers." I said my buyers cared about weight gain and clean records. He grinned. "Sure, but presentation matters." That was the fresh wound before the papers, the suggestion that I was quaint, a relic posing as a rancher. Mara texted me that night. "We just want to help. This is what people do now." I typed and deleted 5 replies. The land doesn't owe anyone a modern trick, I thought. It owes us water bills paid on time, fences walked, calves tagged, hands shook. I told her I'd look everything over. She sent a heart and a clock. I pinned that thread and stared at it until the phone dimmed. At breakfast, I found a realtor postcard under my door. The man on the postcard was smiling with all his teeth and the slogan, "Turn dirt into dollars." I set it by the coffee and poured black. Mid-sip, a white SUV rolled slow past my gate, reverse lights blinking as if the driver couldn't decide which way to go. 20 minutes later, a stranger in a collared shirt stepped out with a clipboard and a laser measurer. "County appraiser?" I asked. He blushed. "Independent valuation," he said, then added, "Your son-in-law called." My neck tightened. "We're not listing," I said. He shrugged like it didn't matter and wrote down the fence height. Before lunch, a banker I didn't know left a voicemail. "Hello, just touching base about the lien notice. Call us back." Lien notice? I checked my files. Taxes current, water shares paid, no notes outstanding. When I returned the call, the receptionist put me on hold long enough to memorize the crack in my boot sole. When the banker finally spoke, he said, "Must have been a misroute, sorry." in a tone that meant not sorry at all. I told myself the world was clumsy, not malicious. The heifers needed salt. The North Trough needed a fresh gasket. I set the postcard under the saltillo pot, where wind wouldn't carry it off, and went to work. Out by the windmill, the sky was a clean enamel bowl, clouds like scraped cream. Work has a way of rinsing worry. But as I was closing the gate, my phone buzzed. A group text from Mara, Ty, and Evelyn. "Don't worry about the paperwork," Evelyn wrote. "We've done this many times. Families lean on structure. Families lean on each other," I thought, but I typed nothing. That evening I reread the LLC package. Dry Mesa Holdings listed a downtown office suite. When I Googled the address, the street view showed a mailbox store and a nail salon. The registered agent had a website built from a template with dead links. My stomach went as flat as the prairie at noon. I told myself I was imagining shadows where there weren't any. At the Sunday barbecue I host every spring, Evelyn arrived with a chilled glass bowl of something that looked like wealth and said, loud enough for the picnic table, "It breaks my heart seeing all this equity sleeping under sunburned shingles." Laughter followed her like bees. Ty clapped my shoulder. "We're just updating, Pop," he said. "You'll still be foreman." The word foreman rang wrong, like I was about to report to a clock on my own land. Hank leaned close and murmured, "You don't have to prove anything to anybody," then drifted off to tend the fire. Later, when we were slicing pie, Ty tapped a folder. "One last signature," he said, "so we can get the rate lock. It's just an assignment of rents, standard stuff." "I don't collect rent," I said. "Exactly," he replied. "No impact." I set down the knife. "If there's no impact," I said, "you won't mind me waiting." His cheeks thinned. Evelyn lifted her chin. "Delay costs money," she said. "Money your grandchildren will need for school." People went quiet the way grass goes quiet before a prairie fire. That night, I opened the week's mail. Beneath a co-op flyer was a letter referencing assignment of rents, Dry Creek Ranch. My heart tapped hard enough to feel in my molars. I read the fine print twice. The document number matched the one in Ty's folder. Someone had already filed something I had not agreed to. The air in the room thinned. I called Mara. She answered sleepy, whispered, "Mom-in-law's got the kids down." When I asked about the filing, she said, "Ty said it's preparatory, not binding. Please don't make a thing." I listened to my daughter's voice ride the rails between loyalty and doubt. "I won't make a thing," I said. "I'll make a call." The next morning, a process server pulled up the same minute the sun cleared the pump jack. He wore a tie like a dare and handed me a manila envelope with my name spelled correct, middle initial included. "Notice to appear," he said, like asking the time. The papers referenced Dry Mesa Holdings and an emergency motion to approve interim management for asset preservation. I could taste metal. I asked who filed. "Petitioner's Counsel," he said, pointing at a line with a downtown address. "Evelyn's family firm." I walked the fence line until my boots went from thinking to numb. When I came back, Mara's car was in the drive. She sat on the steps, eyes red, twisting her wedding band. "It's not what it looks like," she said. "They said it's just a formality, to keep things clean for the bridge loan. It helps everyone." She looked so much like the girl who once cried because we sold a calf she named Cinnamon that my resolve tipped, then steadied. "I'm not signing anything today," I said. "I'm not stepping into court without counsel." Hank leaned on the gate as if he'd grown there. "You smell smoke?" he asked. "All morning," I said. He jerked his chin at the hills. "Folks who work with land move at the speed of weather. Folks who work with paper move at the speed of panic. Don't match their pace." It was the best sermon I'd heard all year. That night, I left a message for a lawyer the feed store swore by and stacked the filed documents beside the coffee maker like scorpions in a jar. When I tried to sleep, the house creaked like a ship changing lanes. At 2 a.m., a truck idled near the mailbox. Headlights swept the porch once, then twice, then disappeared. I sat in the dark, hand on the old phone where the cord remembers storms. The lawyer from the feed store, Nora Bell, returned my call before sunrise, voice like flint striking steel. "Bring everything," she said. "We'll make coffee and a timeline." I drove to town with the envelope buckled in the passenger seat like a restless child. Nora's office smelled like dry books and peppermint. She skimmed the papers, tapping a pen where ink ran too evenly for a real-time signature. This notarization is stamped 7:42 p.m., she said. But the notary's log, if accurate, shows she closed at 5. She slid me a copy of a public roster she kept on hand like a rancher keeps fencing staples. We'll confirm, she said, but timing is off. Then Nora pointed at an email address listed as records@drimsaholdings.com. The domain had been registered 10 days ago through a privacy shield. Burner territory, she murmured. She called a contact at the county recorder. While it rang, I noticed the loan term sheet tucked behind the assignment of rents language. On page 4, Exhibit C listed collateral, fee simple title, and appurtenant water rights. My scalp went cold. Water is life here. You don't list it like a throw pillow. They can't collateralize what isn't theirs, I said. They can try, Nora answered. Panic makes people creative. We walked to the recorder's office. The clerk, Quinn, a kid who used to trail calf for Hank, pulled the microfilm like a magician and threaded it, scanning for the docket number referenced in the mailing. Here, Quinn said, and the screen showed a preparatory notice filed by Dry Mesa Holdings manager. Under manager, in small letters, Ty's signature, witnessed by a paralegal from Evelyn's firm. I stared until the letters blurred into scrub. They're laying railroad track before buying the land, Nora said. If you'd signed, the train would already be whistling. As we left, my phone buzzed with a new message from a number I didn't recognize. This can stay civil if you cooperate. I showed Nora. She smiled without joy. Good, she said. Bullies announce themselves. Back at my truck, I found a second phone wedged beneath the passenger mat. Mara's old case, but not Mara's wallpaper. My thumb hovered, because the lock screen preview flashed an email about the bridge loan closing tomorrow. Nora said treat the week like calving season. Sleep light, log everything, wear gloves for anything that bites. I started at the recorder's index and worked backward. Dry Mesa Holdings had filed 3 notice of interest documents in as many days, all tied to my parcel, each one swapping the signatory from manager to managing member to authorized agent, like hats in a windy lot. The timestamps argued with one another, 7:54 a.m., 5:21 p.m., 12:03 p.m., while the legal description stayed identical, as if someone were pressing copy and paste with shaky hands. I printed each page and circled every mismatch until the paper looked branded. At the bank, I waited behind a ranch hand depositing dusty tip envelopes. When it was my turn, I asked for Kelly, the teller who grew up across from us and once bottle-fed cinnamon with Mara. We sat in the side chairs for mortgage tears. We've gotten 3 verification calls about your rental income, she said carefully. All from a loan office in Tucson, urgent. I said, I don't have rental income. She nodded. I know, but their script cites an assignment of rents. Someone's building a picture. She couldn't show me account notes, but she slid me a list of standard documents lenders request. I recognized 2 titles from Ty's packet. Outside, Hank's former daughter-in-law, Carly, flagged my truck near the feed store. You hear from Jace's realtor? She asked. He's sniffing for water. I asked what that meant. She leaned in. The in-laws pitched leasing back your water shares to an LLC they run, then refinancing using that income to cover a balloon note. If it pops, they foreclose on shares and say you consented by delegation. She spat gravel. That trick's older than the interstate. Before sundown, I called Petra, an ex-assistant from Evelyn's firm whose cousin trims our trees. She spoke like she was on a narrow plank. Watch Fridays, she said. Fewer eyes. And look for cash advances just under thresholds. Back home, I pulled registers and matched receipts to fuel runs Ty claimed. There it was, withdrawals tied to his shop, $9, $700 or $9,800, never 10, repeating like tracks. When I overlaid those dates with recorder filings, the patterns lined up like fence posts in fog. I killed the lamp and saw unfamiliar headlights stop at my cattle guard, idling silent. Headlights washed the porch, then cut. I stepped out with the old mag light and the steadiness you learn from pulling a calf backward at 2 in the morning. Ty climbed out of the truck, alone, hands raised like a truce. Can we talk? He asked. Under the porch light, he looked young, not a schemer, just drowning in plans. It's not about hurting you, he said. We're trying to survive. The shop cratered after the interstate rerouted freight last spring. The bridge loan, he explained, was a plank across a canyon they couldn't see the bottom of. I let him talk a while. He paced the width of the step twice, explaining how the balloon would be covered by subleasing a portion of our water shares to Dry Mesa Rentals, a sister company that would temporarily administer grazing fees to show steady income. Paper income, I said. It's a phase. Evelyn says it's normal arbitrage. We prove capacity, the lender renews, then we give it all back. He sounded like a man praising a horse he's never ridden. What's the rush? I asked. He stared at the dark like it might answer. Because the lender won't hold past Monday, and because Evelyn's family needs optics now. Optics for what? Their audit. They promised a portfolio expansion to cover a bad quarter. My ribs went hollow. We were ballast for someone else's numbers. And Mara. She thinks it's teamwork, keeping you safe from lawsuits. Something inside me softened and hardened at once. My daughter wasn't a villain. She was repeating scripts that profit other people. I told Ty to go home. Bring me Mara tomorrow, just her, I said. No paperwork. He nodded, eyes glassing. Thank you, he whispered, and left a shadow of contrition on the gravel. Inside, I drew a line down a notebook page, family on one side, land on the other. Then I wrote, boundaries are love with proof. Beneath that, I listed what I'd need: stamped filings, email headers, water share ledgers, recorded calls with disclosures, and who must see them together without scripts. Out by the pump, a coyote yipped, and my first reveal found its place. Plans built on anger collapse, so I built mine on procedure. Nora helped me draft requests that sounded friendly and landed like subpoenas in boots. Copies of notary logs, certified timestamps from the recorder, lender disclosures with call recordings, and water share transfer histories from the irrigation district. She approved projecting the documents on the TV in her conference room. Make them read their own lines, she said. No shouting, just seeing. I called the irrigation district manager, a man powered by coffee and highlighter. Any activity on Dry Creek shares? I asked. He coughed. Funny you ask. Got an inquiry from a manager asking about assignability. I told him water shares can't be collateralized without owner consent. He added, owners tend to call me themselves. I thanked him and asked for a letter. He promised a scanned, date-stamped copy by email. Next, I met the bank's compliance officer, a woman with a librarian's shush in her posture and eyes. How does assignment of rents fit a ranch? I asked. It doesn't, she said. It's a commercial landlord term. When it shows up on cattle, we ask why. She explained balloon notes plainly. A big lump due later, everyone pretends will be fine. Imaginary futures make excellent collateral, she said. Until they don't. I recorded a call with the Arizona lender's main line after their disclosure beeped. The rep chirped about fast decisions, confirmed Dry Mesa Rentals would stabilize cash flow while Dry Mesa Holdings perfected collateral positions. Both controlled by the same persons? I asked. Common management is efficient, she said. I boxed those words in my notebook 3 times. Finally, I texted Mara. Lunch at Nora's office tomorrow? No pressure, just clarity. She replied with a heart and a trembling hand emoji I pretended not to understand. I told Hank I might need him nearby to keep the room from tilting. He said, I'll bring a pocketful of silence. That night, I slept 4 hours, dreamless, and woke certain the first move would be theirs. Sunday dinner at Mara's place smelled like rosemary chicken and a peace offering. Evelyn sat at the head as if the table had been built around her, pearls where armor would be. Ty passed me a manila folder as if it were the salt. Just a final consent, he said lightly. So we can close Monday and spare everyone the drama. The word spare struck bone. Mara's eyes searched mine, pleading, loving, worried. Mom, she said, I hate this tension. Please. I opened the folder. The top document was titled Managerial Delegation and Consent to Collateralization. Someone had pre-initialed my boxes in faint gray, as if to guide my hand like bowling bumpers. I set the page down and reached for water. Evelyn's smile didn't shift, but her voice sharpened like a boot heel. Everyone in this family needs to act like owners, she said. Sentiment is for scrapbooks. Hank, quiet until then, laid his fork down and cleared his throat. Some owners build, he said, and some owners strip. Ty tried again. Think of the kids, he said softly. This keeps the house. I thought of Cinnamon the calf and of Mara at 8. reading brands like a second alphabet. I thought of North Pasture and Drought, and of a creek that never bragged when it ran. I will not sign tonight, I said. Tomorrow we will all sit down at Nora's with the bank officer and the district manager's letter. We will read out loud. Evelyn exhaled a laugh. We don't perform for small-town theatrics, she said. Deals die in fluorescent rooms. I met her gaze. Then this one can live in daylight or not at all. Mara's hand trembled on her napkin. Ty pinched the bridge of his nose until the skin whitened. The children clattered blocks in the next room, their world full of rectangles that made houses or fences depending on where you set them. A headlight-dark sedan tailed me to the county line, then disappeared. Nora's conference room was all glass and fluorescent honesty, a table long as a branding chute. I set out copies like feed pans. The district manager's letter confirming water shares can't be pledged without owner consent. The notary log showing she'd closed at 5 on the day a 7:42 p.m. Stamp claim to witness my signature. The Arizona lender's disclosure transcript with common management is efficient boxed in ink. Hank took the chair by the door, hat on his knee, silence loaded. The bank's compliance officer, Marisol, arrived with a legal pad and the kind of gaze that straightens lanyards and pretenses. She nodded to me, then to Nora. We'll take this stepwise, she said. Mara slipped in alone, face bare of makeup and defenses. Ty's parking, she whispered, and then as if finishing a thought. He said he shouldn't, but he's coming. I took her hand and felt the same bird-bone fear as the first time she loped a skittish colt. Evelyn entered last with a junior associate carrying a rolling case that sounded like a bad verdict. We're here as a courtesy, Evelyn said, folding into a chair like a queen abdicating for sport. If this devolves into small-town melodrama, we're done. Nora clicked the TV on and mirrored a folder labeled Ranch Facts. The first document swelled onto the screen, crisp and undeniable. The preparatory filing with Ty's signature under manager. My client has not delegated management, Nora said, voice smooth as a good welt. Therefore this is a false representation. Evelyn shrugged. Anticipatory, she said. Marisol wrote a note. The next slide showed the notary ledger. The room temperature shifted half an inch toward winter. Either the notary lied or someone stamped without presence, Nora said. Both are reportable. Ty arrived, hair damp from hurry, eyes glassed with sleep lost to dread. He hovered near the wall, as if the drywall might grant absolution. Nora advanced to the lender transcript. The italicized line, common management is efficient, hung in white space like a noose offered as a necklace. Marisol capped her pen. If entities with common control generate income to justify collateralizing the same asset, that's circular, she said. Circular turns into deceit when disclosure is fuzzy. I opened the last folder, Watershare Ledger, and asked Mara to read the highlighted line out loud. She looked at the words, swallowed, and said very quietly, they plan to strip our water if the balloon popped. Mara's voice wobbled, then steadied as she read the rest. Upon balloon default, shares revert to dry Mesa Rentals for disposition. The word disposition made the room smell like cold metal. Evelyn's mouth twitched. Contingency language, she said. Unused unless incompetence forces our hand. My jaw ticked. Your hand on my shovel, I said. Marisol flipped her legal pad and drew a box around revert. That's not contingency, she said. That's a target. Nora cued the notary's affidavit, emailed at dawn, stating she never met me and never stamped past 5. Then Nora slid in a screen capture of the domain registration, drymesaholdings.com, registered via Privacy Shield. Billing email tied to a marketing intern at Evelyn's firm. The intern had reposted Ty's shop fundraiser 3 months ago, a bright breadcrumb in a gray field. Ty broke first. It wasn't supposed to be like this, he said, voice cracking. We needed time. Evelyn shot him a look sharp enough to skin a steer. Stop apologizing, she hissed. We Six Sigma'd the risk. Everyone lands on their feet. Nora raised a palm. Not everyone, she said. My client's feet stay on this dirt. She tapped the final slide. Cash advance patterns just under reportable thresholds. Dates that matched recorder filings like hoofprints to a gate. These, paired with internal coordination and falsified presence, make a pattern we will place before the court and the state bar. Mara turned to Evelyn. Did you tell me the truth? Silence sloshed. I told you the necessary, Evelyn answered. The mask slipped. Not malice, not even greed. Simply a religion of outcome where people are instruments. Mara flinched as if the floor had sunk half an inch. Mom, she said to me, and the syllable was a lifeline thrown both directions. I nodded, because love deserves a yes even when the contracts don't. Marisol gathered her notes. From a bank perspective, she said, we're issuing a caution flag and pausing any lien perfection tied to these documents. Evelyn's associate scribbled furiously. Nora handed him a prepared notice of intent. Rescind preparatory filings, cease and desist on misrepresentations, and preserve evidence under litigation hold. Serve it, Nora said, and the kids' Adam's apple hopped. Evelyn stood, pearls clicking like hail on tin. You're torching your family's future, she said. You think you've won daylight. You've only delayed the inevitable. Delay is the difference between drowning and finding shore, I replied, and watched Ty finally lower his eyes. He whispered, there's one more account you haven't seen, and it's worse. Ty's confession spilled with the rhythm of someone ripping out stitches. A margin account opened under dry mesa rentals at a regional brokerage, collateralized with a promissory note secured by anticipated lease income from my water shares. If the market hiccuped, a margin call would cascade through to the bridge loan and snap the balloon early. Why? Nora asked. To paper a quarterly report for Evelyn's family firm, Ty said, and keep my shop from shuttering the next week. The room hummed with the fluorescent sound of men who mistake desperation for strategy. Marisol called her compliance director. We're filing a suspicious activity report today, she said, calm as a granite fence post. By afternoon, Nora e-filed motions. Emergency injunction against any transfer or encumbrance, request for sanctions based on false notarization, and a preservation order for all communications between entities sharing staff, management, or email infrastructure. The clerk pinged back a hearing date, Wednesday, 9 a.m. I signed declarations until my hand cramped, the ink drying like a new brand. Hank fetched sandwiches and sat guard in the hall, telling whoever asked that he was weighing ghosts. At home, the phone became a siren. Cousins taking sides, friends advising peace, two anonymous numbers promising reputation damage if I kept dragging decent people. Mara showed up at dusk, empty-handed, hair in a ragged bun. We sat on the porch without speaking until the heat bled out of the day. I hate what I swallowed because I trusted people who sounded certain, she said. Hate beats guilt only until it doesn't, I answered. We'll do the paperwork and the therapy in that order. She laughed a little through her nose, then cried like rain through leaves, quiet, persistent, welcome. The next morning, I drove the fence alone, cataloging chores the way you count blessings to remember who you are. A drone, small, commercial, buzzed the cottonwoods, then zipped away. 5 minutes later, a smear of posts about financial elder abuse hit local Facebook. A smear site bloomed with my name. I took screenshots, printed them, and fed them to Nora's litigation hold. Evelyn filed to rescind as a gesture of goodwill, attaching a press release that framed me as confused and overwhelmed by modern finance, which sank like a horseshoe in my gut. I closed the laptop, tightened my reins, and rode for Wednesday like weather coming. Court smelled like old carpet and sharpened pencils. Nora's tie was the color of rain-streaked river rock. The judge, a woman who'd grown up 3 counties over branding the same month we did, listened longer than most men I've met and asked better questions than any investor I've ever heard. She granted the injunction, cited the notarization discrepancy as deeply troubling, and referred the matter to the Attorney General's Consumer Protection Unit. Evelyn's jaw did a tiny clench. Her associate paled like hail shadowing a field. Ty sat behind us, small and shaking, and did not meet my eyes. Mara squeezed my hand once hard. After, we walked to the irrigation district. The manager printed a big, slow letter acknowledging the attempted inquiry and affirming that water shares stay in the owner's hand unless the owner says so in ink. I bought 3 copies, framed one in my kitchen like a family portrait. Then I met with a land trust about a conservation easement that would lower the taxable value and install steel rails against future equity unlocks. Easements are fences you cast in law, the director said. They require you to love tomorrow more than applause today. I signed the exploratory packet, conditions marked in red like a boundary line at dusk. Therapy was a small room with 2 chairs and a clock that refused to perform. Boundaries are grief with structure, the counselor said. I nodded until the nod became a breath, and the breath became language. Mara came with me the second week and brought an apology that looked nothing like the textbook kind. Messy, specific, repair-focused. We drafted a family help plan. I'd assist with a modest bridge to keep their house, but only with written conditions, third-party oversight, and no contact with Evelyn's firm. Ty would enroll in a financial skills course at the community college. We wrote each clause down, initialed, dated, and scanned it as if it were a brand. In the bunkhouse, I set up a cheap printer and a fireproof safe. Paper, the thing that nearly took the ranch, became the thing that held the line. At dawn, I saddled up and rode out past the arroyo, following quail prints scribbled like forgiveness across the sand. That night, just before sleep, my phone flashed an unknown number with a voicemail promising one last attempt to negotiate privately before reputations suffer. I saved the voicemail, took a screenshot, filed it under evidence, and turned off the phone. The dark had the old wait again, the kind where coyotes sing and an owl signs its name across the arroyo, and the wind braids your hair with the smell of wheat and creosote. I thought about the first time I let Mara steer the truck, her hands at 10 and 2, eyes big as the moon. I thought about Ty, who mistook momentum for wisdom and called it love because fear wore that accent. And I thought about Evelyn, whose religion worshipped optics, not roots. I'm not built for revenge. I'm built for fences that can be mended and gates that swing only one way when they must. What I learned: dignity is a ledger you balance daily with tiny entries. Money is a tool that dulls fast if you swing it like a sword. Love, if it's going to last, needs contracts that don't bleed people and apologies that come with receipts. If a family member says temporary, find the paperwork that says when and how it ends. If someone says assignment of rents, ask what rent exists. Call the recorder yourself. Ask the notary what hour their stamp sleeps. Define balloon. Define margin. Write dates. Keep copies. Make strangers read their lines in rooms with fluorescent lights and other people's eyes. The ranch is quieter now. The easement process ticks along like a windmill catching a steady gust. The bank emails are dull in the most beautiful way. Mara and I trade recipes and repair schedules, and sometimes we do both in one note, which feels like truth. Ty texts me photos from his class, a spreadsheet that behaves, a budget that works, a remark about how circles can be helpful when they're corral pens. I replied with a thumbs up and a picture of Cinnamon's granddaughter nosing a salt block at dawn. This morning, the sun climbed the cottonwoods, a coyote crossed like a gray ribbon, and the trough reflected a sky that didn't need an audit to be blue. I poured coffee, opened the safe, checked the letters, and breathed like the land had waited for me to remember it. And then a white SUV slowed at my gate, and the driver lifted a camera.